I'm watching. What are you doing?
Oh, imagine having that as a dog up in my room.
Yeah. They won't, that one don't want to get down, does it?
Fingers off though.
Yeah.
Do you like this one?
He's feeding them.
No, he's getting a show of this one, isn't he?
These are not getting any, are they?
This one's greedy.
He's feeding them fish, look. These ones don't go down, no. They don't want to get down. Yeah. Look. See them eating their fish.
Alright, hello everybody, welcome to Bournemouth Oceanarium and welcome to Penguin Beach Encounter. My name's Casey, I'm going to be telling you a little bit about some of the animals in this enclosure, whilst my colleague Chris is giving them their lunch for today. So in this enclosure, of course, we have a colony of 12 Humboldt penguins. Now when you think of the word penguin, you often think of them living somewhere nice and cold, maybe up in the North Pole of Santa. But there are a couple of myths about penguins, and that's definitely one of them. So all our penguin species actually live in the southern hemisphere. That means none live up in the North Pole, and none live anywhere above the equator. And lots of our penguin species actually live in hot countries, so you often think of them living somewhere really cold, and although you can find them in Antarctica in the South Pole, you are more likely to find them in a hot country. In fact, these guys can live anywhere from South America, South Africa, even as far as Australia and New Zealand as well. So they do come from all over the southern hemisphere. These guys in particular are called Humboldt penguins. They're actually named after something called the Humboldt Current. This is a current of water coming all the way from Antarctica up to South America, bringing them nice icy water. But they are used to living in beaches of chilly Peru, so they do have the hot sunshine shining down on them as well, which is why they get on really, really well in the UK, and actually you'll find them lots and lots of zoos and aquariums in the UK because they can adapt to the temperature so well. One of these adaptations is actually the pink patch around their face where no feathers grow at all. Now this pink patch of their skin is actually one way they can regulate their temperature. So when it is nice and sunny and they have been doing their sunbathing, this patch will go bright pink, almost looking like they're blushing. And this is one way they can control their temperature. So when it does go bright red, they let out heat through their face and they can cool down. So this is one way they can regulate if they are a little bit too hot. Of course, if they are too hot as well, they can just jump in that icy water and cool down a little bit. But luckily for these guys, they have 2 layers of feathers on them. The first layer is almost like wearing a cotton jumper. It keeps air nice and close to their body to keep you nice and warm. And then the outer layer of feathers is like wearing a wetsuit or a waterproof. So when they are in that icy water, they never actually get too cold because their skin doesn't get wet. They stay nice and protected from the water. So we do have one penguin in this enclosure that looks a little bit different than the others. We do have a chick at the moment. Our chick's name is Ponyo, and Ponyo is coming up to around a year old, so she was born around this time last year. Now Ponyo has a more silvery coat than the others, and she doesn't have that black band of feathers on her chest, so she does look a little bit different, but she's the same size as the other ones and pretty much fully grown. When she goes through her first molt this year, she'll look just like the others with that black band across her chest as well. So when Ponyo was born, we actually had no idea whether she was a girl or a boy. It's impossible to tell just by looking at a penguin whether they are male or female. We actually have to go as far as doing a DNA test on them to find out their gender. So for Ponyo, we took a little bit of blood and found out that she was a girl, and this is why she's wearing her band on her right-hand side. So all of the females in this enclosure have their bands on their right-hand side, and all of the males have them on their left-hand side to tell them apart. But the way I like to remember this is by saying that girls are always right. Different colours of the bands are of course for the different penguins as well, and if you do have a very keen eye, they do have their names written on them as well, so you can find out a couple of their names. So Ponyo's has a yellow band on her right-hand side, which is how you can tell her apart. But if you are very experienced, like our keeper Chris, you can actually tell them apart another way. So their black dots on their bellies form a different pattern for different penguins. So there's no 2 penguins with the same spot patterns on their bellies. So if you do know these guys very, very well, then you'll learn that they have different patterns, and you might learn a couple of them apart from each other. And it's one way that we can tell who's eating and who's not from really, really close up, just by looking at their bellies. Now, of course, the penguins aren't the only birds that we have in this enclosure. We do have Inca terns in here as well. These are the flying birds you might be able to see above your heads. Now, our Inca terns also come from South America, so they have a very good relationship with our penguins. They do get on really well with each other, and they would live together in the wild as well. So our Inca terns, of course, they're most recognisable for their curly white moustaches, and actually it's a good indication of their health as well. So the longer and the curlier their moustaches, the healthier the birds is. And you can see that our birds all have lovely curly moustaches, which means they're all super healthy.
All the stuff on the floor.
So one of the ways these guys actually work together in the wild is when they are hunting for their food. So the penguins, the way they like to get their dinner, they swim out to sea and they find a school of fish, bring it up to the surface of the water, and they can pick a couple of fish out for their dinner. The Inca terns will actually follow them out to sea, picking a few fish off the top of the water as well, so they both get their dinner that day. Another way they actually share a habitat and have a relationship in the wild is when it comes to their breeding season. So the way our penguins like to make their nests, they get all sorts of twigs, rocks, anything they can find along the beach, put together and basically poo all over it to stick it together. So they use something called guano, which is just a fancy word for seabird poo. And it is a really, really good glue. In fact, they make such good nests that once they're done raising their chicks, the Inca terns will often use their nests to lay their own eggs into. So as well as a good glue, this guano makes a good insulator, so it keeps their eggs lovely and warm whilst they're incubating. But unfortunately, as well as making a good glue and insulator, this guano also makes a good fertiliser. And the reason that this is a problem is that some local farmers are choosing to take this away from the penguins to use on their crops. And unfortunately, as there's no way to take away this guano apart from destroying their nests, and then without any nests, there'll be no way to raise their chicks. So one thing we're actually doing to help this, we're supporting a charity last year and this year called PSJ, and they're doing lots of good work out in South America to help the Humboldt penguins out there, especially when it comes to their breeding season. Some of the challenges and fundraising activities we've done from this include doing a 5K up and down the beach in penguin costumes. We've even done a skydive dressed as penguins. We've done a quiz where we ended up with eggs splattered all over our head, which was horrible. And we've done some insect eating competitions as well, and some other horrible things that some of our colleagues have put us through. So we're doing some similar things this year, especially ones that you can get involved in as well. So if you are interested in learning more about this or finding out how you can get involved, there's lots of information on our website and our social media that I definitely encourage you to look at. So our penguins are eating sprat today. Now sprat is a small type of herring, and you might notice when they eat it, they always eat it head first. And there is a very special reason for this. It's actually the way that the fish grows. So the scales on the fish grow in one direction, not the other. So they're nice and streamlined if they're going head first. But if they're tail first, there's a small chance it might scratch the penguin's throat. If Chris was to give one tail first or side on, a couple of the penguins will try and do something very impressive, throw it up in the air and catch it the right way round. But more often than not, they'll just drop it on the floor. So they know that they're very spoiled here. If they don't like a particular fish, we'll keep giving them fish until they choose one that they like. If a fish is a little bit too big or too small, they often drop it as well. Or if it's not perfectly straight, if it's a little bit curly, they choose not to eat it as well. So our penguins, of course, they are black and white. They have their white bellies and black backs, and this means that they stand out really well on land, but it is actually a form of camouflage. So this black back is really, really important when they're swimming in the water. If you're looking down on some of the penguins swimming, you'll see the blacks of their backs against the depths of the sea, and they'll blend in really, really well. On the other hand, when you're downstairs looking up at our penguins, you'd see the whites of their bellies against the brightness of the sky, and they blend in well there as well. This is something called counter shading, and a lot of animals use it across the animal kingdom, especially the ones that spend most of their time in the water. So when you do look through the rest of the aquarium, try and spot some other animals that have this technique of having a darker back and a lighter belly. I will end my talk there though. Thank you very much for listening. If you do have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll be sticking around for a little bit at the end. Our next talk is at 2 o'clock where we'll be feeding our reef sharks. Other than that, have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you very much for listening.
There you go.